All right. Hello, new life. Welcome to our new location that is gray and beautiful. This is the Jew and the Gentile podcast. My name is Pastor Samuel, and this is Jesse Reckelberg, one of our great elders.
What's up, people?
Not because of his age, just because he's great. Just want to make that clear.
We'll take that.
I'm not calling you old.
It's okay.
All right. So, the last time we were together,
Right.
I think we talked about excellence. And today I kind of wanted to hit on kind of the consequence of excellence, either its absence or its presence.
Right.
Like, what does that look like, and what are the outcomes that we should expect, and why is it important to be excellent? And what does it actually mean? I guess in the application, so the application of excellence is where the rubber meets the road kind of deal. Like, yesterday I was doing some classes, and one of the instructors was like, so you can't say you're a man of faith if you aren't faithful.
Right.
Faithfulness is the application of your faith. And I thought that was really good. Like, that's just like,
Right.
I never thought of like someone, because we say that all the time. It's like, oh yeah, there's a man of faith.
Right.
It's like, but if you're not faithful, you're not actually a man of faith.
Right.
And so, like, I feel like the same is true with all of these things like that we do, strategies and all the, programs and all this stuff, that if we don't do it in excellence, that like the application of those things should be excellence.
Right.
And so for me, that's really important.
Right. And the thing about excellence too, I mean, a lot of people, they think that adding a whole bunch of things to your
Can you
plate-
bring it a little bit closer? I think?
a little closer?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of people, they feel by adding things to their plate that makes excellence. But to be honest with you, sometimes we actually have to chip away at the things that we're not excellent at
Yeah.
and do the things that we do well first and steward what God has given us just as a person.
Yeah.
First, before you can add all these things onto you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I mean, one of those, as a leadership team, we did we didn't even actually finish it, but like planning the year thing.
Yeah.
From that company, Monk Manual. I have one. It's a great product. I'm going to give them a shout out to the people, because I care about you. It's called the Monk Manual. It's beautiful. It says Monk Manual here. It's a little far away, but anyway, I started using it because of that reason. Like, I got to a point in life where I had just got married, and then we had a child very quickly afterwards, and then I got promoted to being a manager of a store, and I was scheduling 3 different areas basically. Like, okay, this is the main store, this is the conference, and this is we have a shop in the mall.
Right.
And I was just like, I can't keep up. So there came a point where I was like, I need something to help me focus on what's important,
Right.
because I can't do everything to the best the way I want to.
Right.
I can't do my best if I'm focused on all these different things. And so it's really, really important. And I think in our culture, we don't do this enough.
No.
Of sitting down and figuring out what is actually important for me right now in this season. What's important for me in the long run? What can I do excellently? What are the things I actually want to do? And I guess that's a more of a self-awareness thing, but excellence actually does take self-awareness.
Right.
If we're just going through life and doing a bunch of stuff, I think there's a bunch of people who are in fields of work that they never even wanted to be doing.
Right.
Because they never sat down and and figured out what they actually want to do with their life,
what their passion
what
is.
they're passionate about, what they're called to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a detriment to you and your community, to your family, and to God. Like, how terrible is that going to be if, when I die, when I go to heaven, it's like, hey, actually, you weren't called to that.
Mm-hmm.
You did a pretty good job, though.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, it's interesting too because I went to college and I was gonna go for police science, and then I was gonna work with juveniles, and then obviously we got into the restaurant, own a restaurant, and the reality is obviously when you're in a restaurant, you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with employees, and through this whole process with myself, I've learned that actually what my true passion is it's not food. It's actually people. Like I actually have a passion for people and whatever that looks like in that sphere. So I had to actually God kind of chipped away at these things, burned off the things that really don't matter.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I do people really well now.
Right.
But even more so, like he's leading me in a specific direction. Like that's my passion.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about pastoring or eldering or any of that kind of stuff. Like I just love people.
Right.
And that's what I want to do is people. So
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
yeah.
But actually, it's funny that we stumbled upon this, but I think self-awareness, I've preached this sermon a couple times to my youth group, is self-awareness is probably the biggest key that we just don't do.
Uh-huh.
We just do a terrible job of it.
Yeah.
And it's really, really important.
Right. I don't remember how you say it in Greek, but ancient Greek, but there's a saying to know thyself.
Yeah.
To know who you are. And
yes.
But ultimately we can't know ourselves until we actually know how Christ sees us.
Yes.
Right? That's the first thing,
Yeah. I actually have two parts to this sermon from that it's self-awareness, knowing who you are, what your passions are, what's your gifts, what you're good at, what you're bad at, what you actually really need. And then you actually need to bring that in alignment with God awareness.
Right.
And then from there is really the point where because our society is pulling us in so many directions. Mm-hmm. We have so much distraction, so much opportunity, that it's really become a detriment.
It has.
To who we are. I mean, kids these days are pulled in so many directions that I was never even pulled. Like, why are we making it you get more options? Like,
right.
How is it going to be a good idea that you're 10 years old and now you get to pick your gender? Well, here we go, guys. Here we go. I didn't think we were going that deep today, but there it is.
It is.
But, we're giving these people, these young kids, even more options, these confused people more options, which they aren't real options.
Nope. No.
And we're expecting good results instead of bringing them to self-awareness and God awareness and being like, who did God made you to be?
Right.
And how do you do that really well?
Right. I hate to bring up my kids. This is the third podcast in a row, but it's interesting. The struggle of kids these days. Like you said, all these choices, and years back, both of them decided to not be on social media, and say what? A lot of people are like, no way, and it wasn't because. At first, it was about they're nonconformists, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it actually ended up being more about like, if you really want to have a relationship with me, it has under my terms, it has to be done this way.
Right.
And the purity of it and the thought process behind it, because they wanted to not be conformed by the world says you have to have a relationship this way.
Right.
Not that they're against social media anymore at this point. I don't think they are, but I think what it is they found, like, if I want to have a relationship with someone, I want to do it in a more excellent way.
Yeah, in a more real way.
Yes.
Yeah. I completely understand that from my experience, but I was never a huge social media person to begin with. But it is super rare because your kids are younger than me.
Right.
Their generation
Yeah.
shouldn't have thought that. Well, they don't think that way.
No, and it's not like again, I'm not opposed to social media. Obviously, we're using it right now.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think they are either. But there is a thought process, like you said, with choosing your own gender.
Yeah.
That if you have all these choices, it's almost like you become numb to the real choices.
Yeah, to reality. To reality, really. Like, you can't do all of these things. We're not, like, the world's like, you could do whatever you want. I mean, no, you can't.
Right.
Actually, there's like, I will never be in the NBA.
Come on, man. Spud Webb.
Ever. Ever. I'm 5'8".
True.
Never going to make it in the NBA.
I think Spud Webb is 5'8".
Not fast enough.
No.
Can't shoot the hoops.
Nope.
It's just not going to happen. You know,
Right.
there's just, that's not reality.
No.
Like, maybe could I have if I put the work in, if I had the passion, but I didn't.
Yeah. It's almost like the world tries to make choices for you instead of you making your own choices.
Yeah, and it's almost become like an idol too, like that. Oh, you could do whatever you want, instead of this idea that like the Bible's like use your freedom
Right.
wisely, like use your freedom for the Lord.
Right.
Like you can, you're free, but make sure you're using your freedom
Right.
for the Lord, not for the flesh. And so, it's become a really. It's like a gift that's become a curse.
Right. It's actually interesting too because it's bizarre. This is a weird twist. But I know we had a prayer morning a couple days ago, and one of the verses that popped in my head was "Train up a child in the way he should go.
Yeah.
When he gets old, he will not depart from it." And Christians have twisted that into meaning like raise your kids up, teach them the word, and then they'll not depart from it. And I heard a message, and I have no idea who it was by, to be honest with you. But it made me rethink that verse about how train your child up to recognize what they're passionate about, and then as a parent, push them to follow those passions.
Yeah.
And what happens is they become more self-aware
Yeah.
in the process.
Yeah.
You know, because too often we as a parent, you know, we want to stop what we think. We want to have them do what we want them to do.
Right.
And we want them to become what we want them to become. And
Yeah.
it actually deflates them, discourages them,
Yeah.
and keeps them from stepping into their God-given destiny.
Right. With an alignment with that, I heard this verse interpreted this way. Psalm 127, verse 3, "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate." And so, I mean, we're so far away from, well, maybe so. You use arrows, but
Right.
you don't make your own, right?
No.
So back in the day, you know, when this was written, you as a warrior would craft your own arrows.
Right.
You would choose, you know, the length, the arrowhead, the feathers. Right. You would be part of the crafting of this arrow. And so you would know how it's the projection of it, how is it going to fly, how is it going to work. And so with children, we've been entrusted with these human beings that God created.
Right.
We were part of the creation process, which is awesome, right? That's a miracle.
Right.
But we're actually supposed to be crafting them to how God wants them to be.
And who they are.
And who they are.
Right.
Like, it's pretty prevalent. It's pretty obvious that each child is so much different.
Right.
They have, like, you're like, how do you both come from me? Like,
Right.
I don't understand.
Your two little ones are so different from each other. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, you know, like the idea of that is really cool to me. Like we're part of
Yes.
the crafting process, and when the purpose is to launch you, to
Yeah.
launch you into your calling, to your destiny,
Right.
into what you're good at, instead of like just not doing certain things.
Right. And seeing what your kids are right from the beginning and saying, okay, this is what I don't know what it looks like,
Right.
but encouraging them even when they want to pursue something that doesn't necessarily fit in your thought process or vision for their life,
Yeah.
because eventually God will bring them back
Yeah.
right to where where they're going,
Mm-hmm.
and so even through failures or even through like, oh, this isn't going to work, it actually lifts them up, as long as as a parent you encourage them
Yeah.
and say, hey, be excellent in every single thing that you do.
Right. Well, because so life isn't linear.
Right.
And I think that's something our society tries to push, is like this, like, okay, you go to school, go to college, you do this.
Oh my.
It's step by step. And I don't see a whole lot of linear life in
No.
here.
No.
Jesus was born
Mhm.
into a carpenter family.
Uh-huh.
He was a carpenter or whatever, a
Right.
construction worker, however you want to say it. And he did that for a long time.
Right. I mean, if it's linear, then Mary had Jesus when she was what, 13,
Yeah, 13, 14
years
something like
old,
that.
but yet Sarah had
Yeah, when she was like
80 or whatever the heck she
something
was.
crazy.
Yeah, so it's not about that. It's not about
Yeah.
that at all.
One of my favorite teachers from my school, his name was Paul Manwaring. Do you know him? But he did this whole thing called, like, I think it was like Equip Week or something like that. But like, life is not linear; it's a dance. Like, and we don't understand all of the things that God's doing for us to get to where He's called us to.
Right.
Like, there's things that you and I are called to that haven't even been set up yet. That may not even have language for it yet.
No.
There may not be technology for it yet,
Right.
but we're called to it. And so He has to set this all up for us to understand
Right.
why.
Exactly.
And so, like, why did you, perfect example, why did you do law enforcement and
Right. I was going to do counseling kids.
yeah,
and-
counseling kids? Oh, because God knew that, eventually you're going to be someone who manages a store with a bunch of young people,
Right.
and then you're going to be really involved at this church with all kinds of people.
All different kinds.
All different kinds of people, right? And so, like, we don't know. And I'm like, why did I work at a sandwich shop? Why did I work at a random factory? Like,
and you might not know yet.
yeah,
Yeah.
all of these things, all these random jobs have created something that has the capacity to do what I do now.
Right.
And all of these, like, things that seemingly I was like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to work at a window factory? But it instilled in something in me in that time. It was actually, looking back, I'm like, wow, that was a really cool
Right.
experience. So
Interesting.
it's like all in preparation for excellence,
Right.
actually.
Right. Yeah. It's excellence is a beautiful thing when you really understand it.
Yes.
It's not about always just doing the best either. It's more than that.
Yeah.
I think there's a foundation there that you want to do things in excellence, but it's actually a way of life.
Yeah.
When you wake, the minute your feet hit the floor, to the minute your head hits the pillow, there's an excellent way of life.
Yeah.
That can happen.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And well, read that
The whole thing.
yeah, because I think this is important. And I think also to note that I think we said this before, but excellence is not perfection.
Right. It's not. So I woke up this morning and the Lord kind of led me to Psalm 16 because I knew we were going to be talking about excellence. And I knew there was a verse that talked about being excellent people. I mean, we hear a lot of Psalms, how excellent are your ways, O Lord, and all these different things. But Psalm 16, starting at verse 3, I'm going to read the first verse, but then I want to pause there for a second. How excellent are the Lord's faithful people. My greatest pleasure is to be with them. So right from the beginning, the Lord is saying, you are excellent people. He's already speaking identity over us. He's already saying, like, you already are excellent, right? So then it switches immediately to David, and he says, those who rush to other gods bring many trouble on themselves. I will not take part in their sacrifices. I will not worship their gods. You, Lord, are all I have, and you give me all I need. My future is in your hands. How wonderful are your gifts to me. How good they are. I praise the Lord because he guides me, and in the night my conscience warns me. I am always aware of the Lord's presence. He is near and nothing can shake me. I am so thankful and glad. I feel completely secure because you protect me from the power of death. I have served you faithfully, and you will not abandon me to the world of the dead. You will show me the path that leads to your life. Your presence fills me with joy and brings me pleasures forevermore.
Yeah.
So when I was reading that, like, what I really saw in that whole chunk of scripture is that, first of all, God calls us and says, hey, you guys are excellent.
Yeah.
So he already knows that we have the capability for excellence. But David also recognized God's voice, and he heard it, and he writes it down, right? And he also recognized, like, immediately, like, okay, I can achieve excellence in everything I do, but I can't. That I need the Lord's presence in my life. I need him to direct my steps. I need him to do everything in me so I can achieve this excellence that the Lord shows us.
Yeah.
So,
and I love how that he automatically connects excellence to the presence of the Lord.
absolutely.
And a lot of times, I mean, there is excellence just by human endeavor.
In the way the world looks at it.
In the way the world looks at it. But there's something actually way more powerful and way more supernatural if we would focus on the right things, like we were saying. Mm-hmm. We would actually focus on the presence of the Lord,
right,
empowering us to do excellent.
Right.
And I just wonder what that actually looks like. What that actually looks like. And I guess actually Daniel 6 is a great example of that. Like, then this Daniel became distinguished above all the other presidents and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom.
Right.
And Daniel refused to stop being in the presence of the Lord, even to his own detriment, right?
Yeah.
Like they wanted
to kill him.
They tried to kill him.
Right.
They made laws purposely just to try and kill him.
Right.
And so, but there was an excellent spirit in him.
Right.
And I'm like, ooh, the excellent spirit. That sounds like the Holy Spirit to me.
Right.
And so I feel like so the consequences or the absence of excellence. So the consequence of actual excellence from the Lord, kings will want to give you their kingdom.
Right.
That's what that just told me.
Right.
The king of Babylon wanted to give him the whole kingdom.
Right.
Like, that's crazy.
It is true. Yes.
And that's not even the only time that's happened, because Joseph.
Right.
Like, these kings entrusted these people with their entire kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at that throughout history, that never happens.
No.
Never happens. Kings kill people who threaten their authority, who threaten their wisdom, who threaten their capabilities.
Right.
These kings were like, there's something inside of these people that I want them to be in charge of my kingdom.
Right. And there's a lot of other people too. I mean, you got Abraham, when he wanted to purchase some land, and the king's like, or I can't remember who it was, but he's like, no, you don't even have to pay me. You can have it. And he's
Yeah.
like, no, I'm going to pay you.
Yeah.
Just basically when this excellent spirit that was over him,
Yep.
people just want to give it away to you.
Yes.
And it's weird how that works out.
Yes.
Or another example is Solomon. I think we mentioned that in the last podcast about how, him understanding the presence of the Lord and the wisdom that everything that came and people came to him for advice.
Right.
I mean, the Queen of Sheba, for crying out loud. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy.
Yes. Because the nations came.
Right.
The nations came to him.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because like excellence doesn't need to market itself.
Right.
I mean, great example, Apple. They don't really spend any money on advertising.
No, they don't.
Because they don't need to.
I'm an Android guy.
They make an excellent product, right?
Right.
Like you don't have to like it, but you do say it's an excellent product.
Yes, it is.
Right? Like it's like
I'm just messing with
you.
you.
Yeah. So like they're like, we don't need to.
Yeah.
Or like, I think it's Lamborghini. They never made a commercial.
Oh, I believe that. That I believe.
And somebody was like, why? It's because we're not marketing to people who watch TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and going back to Apple, to be honest with you, I mean, let's just look at Apple. What is it, Apple? What's the current version? 20 or whatever it is?
I don't know, 14, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They really haven't changed much.
No, they really, I mean, they haven't.
They update the camera or maybe the screen size or stuff like that. But the reality is the base of Apple is still the same.
Yep.
And it's interesting. It's like they already know they have an excellent product.
Yep.
And they just maybe do a couple tweaks here and there, and then that's it. It's interesting how that works out. But
yeah.
Like
that story of your father-in-law being like, yeah, we don't do sales because
advertising.
Yeah, advertising or whatever.
Yep.
It's the product's going to speak for itself.
Yep. We don't do the 2 pizzas for $10 type thing because if we do, then we know that the product's cheap right from the beginning. And so we've never done that. And it's interesting, people continue to buy because we have a good product.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like backwards. Like any kingdom principle, it's always backwards to what we actually think.
Right.
And like you always hear these stories of really wealthy people going to restaurants or whatever, and they end up not having to pay because the restaurant either pays for it or somebody else pays for it. Well, because they want to honor that person.
Right. It's so true.
They didn't ask for it. They didn't like, oh, you should pay for me or whatever. Well, they have money, so why would that matter?
Right.
But like excellence, if somebody sees excellence, they honor it, regardless of whether they need that. Like,
right.
Like Donald Trump doesn't need your money.
No.
Right? Like these big tycoons, whatever. They don't need your money, but people want to honor.
Right.
What is where honor is due. Like they want to honor the excellence where they see it.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting how that works out. The thing is the other part of excellence that I think a lot of people, the opposite as far as kingdom excellence is how the world works.
Yeah.
The problem when we try to achieve things on our own, we can do great things.
Yes.
Let's just be honest. I mean,
we can do a lot better things than we actually do.
Oh, absolutely. What do they say? We use like 5% of our brain or whatever. But the problem with worldly excellence is it's almost like the Tower of Babel type thing, where you're actually doing it and you can do these amazing things. But the problem is if you try to work really hard without the presence of God, that's the thing that you're lacking.
Yeah.
And you'll never have full reward in what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed in my own personal life. If I'm not doing it with the Lord, everything is like sawdust in your mouth.
Right.
It just becomes, it's always less than.
Yeah. And it has an expiration date.
Yes.
Like it doesn't actually last that long. It doesn't have a legacy, I would say. But like, I just like to look at like the world's excellent. Like for me, some of the most excellent people are like Navy SEALs.
Yes, absolutely.
Highest quality, probably some of the best warriors in all of history, right?
Right.
They operate at a high level of excellence because their life depends on it, but because it's like the culture that they've created, that we are the best. That's the standard.
Right.
And I'm just like, man, actually most of those guys aren't the strongest.
No.
They're not the most intelligent, but they have integrity. They have a really strong mind.
I was gonna say grit,
It's
but yes,
it's a mental toughness because it's not really anyway. But they did a study with those people, and it's like we would rather pick the guy who's less capable but more trustworthy to be on the teams. It's like,
Right.
are you gonna sleep with my wife? Because I don't want you here. So like you have the best guy at the top, but you can't trust him. They're gonna pick like fifth or sixth, but he has a high integrity.
Right.
And I'm just like, what would it look like if the church had that level of excellence,
Right.
but supernatural,
Right.
but actually what the Lord, like the presence of the Lord excellence, that excellent spirit.
Right.
And I mean, the Bible is pretty clear. Like the world gives us authority actually. Instead of us trying to like earn their
Right.
respect or earn their like cater to whatever they want, or do all these things running around trying to
Right.
make the kingdom happen or whatever.
Right. Yeah. My wife, she's been doing a lot of side research on lions and eagles. The first, like, lions. I mean, they're called the king of the jungle, right?
Yeah.
They're not the biggest.
Yeah.
They're not the strongest. They're not the fastest. I mean, think about it. An elephant could squish a lion in a second.
Yeah.
But there is something that's said about the way they carry themselves and the way they know that they're the biggest. In their mind, they're the biggest, most bad
Yeah.
creature in the jungle.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like, how do it's almost like an excellent spirit, like
Yeah.
they know. And then here, obviously, the Bible, the Lion of Judah.
Yep.
There's something that excellent spirit that we have in us with Holy Spirit, that we can carry ourselves and we can accomplish some crazy, crazy feats.
Yes.
But yet we sell ourselves short.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Often. But I think it does go back to what are we focusing on?
right.
Because we're pulled in so many different directions.
Right.
And, I don't know. I can't remember if I mentioned this in a podcast or not, but gun nerd, love it. Follow all these people.
Oh.
Anyway, but I think I did. But like people get into arguments of like what should be focused on, like what kind of training should be focused on,
Yeah.
and what kind of instructor should you go to? Because if they haven't been in combat, they don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
But like this, I think he was either former Green Beret or a Navy SEAL. He's like, when we were operating, we went to the person who, if we wanted to learn diving, we went to the diving expert.
Yep.
We didn't go to the guy who had to know all of these things, because a special forces operator has this pie and they have to know all of these things in order to be an operator.
Right.
That diving expert, he has to know one thing.
One thing only.
One thing only, and he does it really well.
He wasn't a jack of all trades.
Yeah, he's not a jack of all trades. He doesn't have to spend his time on all of these things. And the church, a lot of times when there's somebody who just focuses on one thing, they're like the gun community, and they want to roast them. They want to
Right.
burn them at the stake because, oh, well, you're not focusing on getting salvations, and you're not going out, and you're not doing XYZ. You're not reading your Bible enough, and all these judgments.
You're
When
not
it's like,
evangelizing.
yeah, you're not.
Everybody should evangelize.
It's like, okay, yeah, but are you spending that much time on the subject of healing?
Mm-hmm.
Can you even? Do you have the passion for that? Do you have the desire for that? No. Okay, but somebody should.
Right. Absolutely.
Somebody should. Somebody should spend that time, and you should celebrate it. And you know what? If you're passionate about evangelism, you should focus on that.
Go for it.
Go for it. And you know what? You should help each other. Because you know what would be great if an evangelism was empowered for healing.
Right.
And you would be awesome if a person who was empowered to heal was empowered for evangelism.
Right.
Wow. What if we could actually help each other?
Right.
You know? And so we're pulled in all of these directions, and for the most part, we should operate in all of these things, right?
Right.
The gifts of the Spirit, or worship, prayer. There's a lot that we need to have in our pie, but God's called some people to have a bigger slice of certain subjects. Not because the other ones aren't as important, but because you just can't focus on everything.
Right.
Like we were talking about. You just can't.
Nope.
It's impossible. And so, like this whole backbiting thing, like competition, we do this really well, we do that really well, you should be doing what I'm doing. Well, maybe not.
No.
Actually, probably not. Because you're not me and I'm not you.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, you know what? Every person should know the Bible. Every Christian should know the Bible. Should every Christian be spending all of their time being a theologian? Like 80% of their time being a theologian? Probably not.
Probably not.
Because for some of you, that would be death. And you would be bored. And you wouldn't understand it.
No.
And you don't have the capacity for it. Sorry, you can't do everything.
Right.
I'm not going to be in the NBA, and some of you are not going to be theologians.
Right. There's some people that'll read so many chapters a day, and they'll get some crazy, revelation out of the word.
Yeah.
Like somebody like me, I'll read a verse and I'll camp on it for 2 weeks, and I'll meditate and say the verse over and over and over and over again in my head, and I'll pray about it and I'll think about it and dive in. So if I tried to do what other people do, I would go insane.
Right.
Because I'd be like, I know I'm missing so much, but
right.
But then there's people who can read, and they get a whole bunch of other stuff. So we have to understand who we are, and it gets back to like knowing yourself, knowing who you are.
Yeah.
Who Christ built you to be.
Yes. And do that excellently, and celebrate the other person who's different than you.
Absolutely.
Because we need theologians, we need evangelists, we need and like, I think it's immaturity it's clearly immaturity that is it makes how other people's passions or desires and what they spend time on evil. I'm like, that's not true. That's just not how that works.
No, it's not. It's interesting you mentioned immaturity, because circling back to the whole eagle and lion thing. So one of the things my wife found out too about eagles is really interesting, that the mother eagle, she, obviously gives birth to the baby eagles. I don't know what they're called, eaglets, or I have no idea what they're called. But she removes any soft thing out of the nest. So there's no feathers, there's nothing soft. She'll actually take them and throw it out. She wants the nest to be uncomfortable so that they won't stay, that they'll go and get out and become who they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And what we've done is we've made our lives so comfortable.
So comfortable.
And I think seeing what you were saying before, that like as far as lack of maturity or whatever it is because we've added all this fluff.
Yeah.
And we're not allowing ourselves to basically fly. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful scenario. I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's very true.
So it's full of thorns and thistles and all these things, and they can't stand it, so they get out of the nest. So
yeah, and that's actually I think that's part of the reason why, if we're honest, we ostracize certain people, because they are actually operating in more excellence in a certain area than we are.
Right.
And it makes us uncomfortable.
Right.
And so we're like, oh, we gotta get that out.
Right.
That's offensive to me. That's offensive to my comfort.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, that guy's an evangelist. He's gonna want me to go evangelize. That's not my personality.
Right.
Oh,
And as a leader, and everybody's a leader, so I don't necessarily mean like specific people. I mean all people. What are we doing to help people, including ourselves,
yeah,
to step into what God has called us to as far as excellence is
Yeah.
concerned? What are we doing? Like, and in me personally, like I want to push people to God's presence, because you
Yeah.
will become excellent. You have no choice. I mean, it's just, the only choice you have is to get into his presence or not.
yeah,
Once you're in his presence, you will become excellent in
yeah.
everything you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have a choice, because there was a time when my wife was in school, and her pastor, they were all meeting, and they were just worshiping, getting into the presence of the Lord, and he was like, "Hey guys," a lot of stuff was going on in the room, like there was people, just experiencing the Lord, laid out on the floor,
Interesting.
they were having encounters. And then other people, all of this stuff was coming up. All of this nasty stuff, all of these problems, all this stuff, getting triggered, whatever, however you want to say it. All of this stuff was coming up. He's like, "Hey guys, we've gone as far as we can today. We need to stop, and we like deal with some of these things." And then,
Wow, that's interesting.
and it's true. Like there's times when we get into the presence of the Lord, and the presence of the Lord is everything, right? It's life. It's what brings us to actual life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we're carrying around all these things that are not actually life, that are down in there and they're getting brought up, we need to deal with them before we can move forward. And so, we can even see that. We can see that everywhere,
Right.
right? That's why a lot of churches don't really, okay, I'm not trying to judge the church. I love the church. I will die for the church, hence why I'm a pastor, okay? So I'm not calling out any other church.
No, nothing specific.
I love the church. I'll partner with any church that wants to come partner with me. I love Catholics. I love Baptists. I love everybody. I love them. I love them all.
Exactly.
I don't care. You love Jesus? Great. Let's be friends. Let's go. All right. But that's a lot of reason why a lot of churches don't give space to the presence of the Lord, because it actually becomes something we have to deal with in ourselves, like in our people. And it becomes like, okay, we have a choice. We've been confronted with all this stuff that we don't actually want to deal with anymore.
Right.
And so, in a way, a lot of times people reject excellence because there's stuff that they have to give up,
That's an interesting thought.
and that we have to deal with. And they reject the presence of the Lord because of that as well.
Yeah.
So it becomes the presence, the Lord, Jesus himself becomes an intellectual idea, becomes an intellectual principle that we agree with,
Right.
instead of a person that we're following and bringing in closer and actually making a part of who we are, and taking out all this stuff that's not supposed to be there.
Yep. Exactly.
And also why people then, because they have removed themselves from the presence of the Lord, they've removed themselves from excellence, but they've also removed themselves from like actually encountering the Lord. And so like the supernatural becomes like, oh, that's not real.
Right. Yeah.
Only because, it's only not real because you've rejected the possibility. Literally every Christian should automatically believe in the supernatural, because you believe that God became a man, was born of a virgin birth, grew up on earth for 30 years, started his ministry, healed a bunch of people, died, rose again, and now lives inside you. do you know how crazy you sound if you don't believe in supernatural?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
much.
what else? Like salvation, you should believe.
All we have to do is believe. Okay. Well,
So like we keep ourselves comfortable.
right.
We keep ourselves comfortable, and I feel like this is a great segue of like, okay, so the absence of excellence, which is honestly, this is so cool. It's actually the rejection of the presence of the Lord.
Exactly.
It's the removal of the presence of the Lord for self-protection.
Interesting.
And so I've grown up in church. I was basically born into church. But anytime that something is done really well, something actually looks nice, something that is beautiful, something that is done to the best of their ability, financially, work-wise, effort-wise, people have a problem with it.
Yes, they do.
Every time. Which is why, for the most part, Christian music isn't good.
For the most part, yeah.
This is also why, for the majority of Christian media, Christian movies, they suck.
Right.
Because we've all decided, okay, we know what really good is.
Mm-hmm.
So since we've all decided that, oh, we can only be this good.
Right.
Because this level of excellence, this level, that's worldly. Or that's too much for the church. That's too much money. Mm-hmm. That's too much work. Why are you spending all that on that? You should be giving it to the poor. Oh, you sound like Judas. Yeah. We then scale it back like 3-4 notches on purpose.
Right.
On purpose, whether it's conscious or not.
Right.
On purpose. Like, I think that the Christian music industry is so far behind on purpose because they know their audience.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
They know their audience, and they're catering to an audience, and they know if they do really well and if they actually sound like good music, like the world has, Christians won't buy it.
Right. It's interesting too, because as you were saying that, I was thinking about The Chosen. I mean, if anybody's ever watched The Chosen series,
love that.
It's actually done really, really well.
Yes.
But they're actually being persecuted a ton.
Yep.
Because it's done really, really well.
Yep.
So it's actually kind of funny that you say that, because it is true.
It's true every time.
Yes.
And it's by the church.
That's not biblical.
I'm just going to rock some of y'all's world. The most persecution I've ever experienced in my entire Christian life is from the church.
I believe that. That I believe.
Non-Christians were so much nicer to me. Mm-hmm. I was blown away when I started actually working a real job, not like side jobs, and they were just so thankful for me. And I was like, dude, I'm just doing what you asked me to do.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, but you do such a good job. Like, you do so well. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I didn't know what to do with it.
Right. It's actually really hard. Because when you say that, because even like as an employer, you're the best boss I've ever had. And I'm like, I'm just being normal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be the best boss. That's who I am.
Yeah. But I didn't know what to do with that, because like, I had put in tons of hours and tons of serving and tons of volunteering at the church. And it's like, yeah, you should be doing that.
Yeah, I totally agree. But how does a person really set their mind? What do they set their mind on as far as excellence? That's the biggest question I think that most people would have is like, okay, well, I want to be excellent.
Yes.
And I know it comes from the presence of the Lord.
Right.
how do I do that, not get offended,
Yeah.
and step into that?
Well, if your goal is to not be offended, stop following Jesus right now.
Yeah, that's a good word.
I think what we actually should do is expect offense
And deal with it immediately.
and deal with the actual offense, because we our Christian culture loves to admit that that we're all messed up, that we've all, we're not perfect. Yet when something happens, we don't actually believe that, and we think we know our perspective is correct. Instead of thinking, oh, maybe I'm seeing this wrong. Maybe actually something inside me is off.
Yeah.
And you know what? Two things could be true at the same time. The other person could be off. Or whatever's offending you.
Right.
But if it's the Lord that's offending you, listen, if the worship's offending you, you're off.
Right. Or if the word is offending you.
Or if the word is offending you, if the Bible's offending you, you're just off.
Right.
And you have two choices. Either you admit that you're wrong and you come to the Lord and say, "Hey, what's going on?" Or the other option, which is the more prevalent option in my experience, is that now you have to find a scapegoat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now you have to find a scapegoat, and now you're nitpicking all of these things that, oh, this isn't good enough anymore.
Right.
Oh, you're not doing this. You're not doing that. You should be more focused on this.
Right.
And it's in the name of like, oh, we need to be doing better. No, you're self-preserving.
Right.
And so, number one thing, become really adept at working through offense.
Yes.
Because you know what? I was thinking about this. Like, people have more loyalty to the Green Bay Packers than they do to a church.
Yeah.
It's become such a consumer-based system that it's like, oh, well, we have zero loyalty to the people that God put us with, zero loyalty to the house that we've been put in, and it's like, if God called you to a church, I don't really see how, like, God called me to this church.
Mm-hmm.
I can't leave it until He tells me to. Mm-hmm. Like, I just won't.
And more often than not, He's not going to tell you to leave a church.
More often than not, because
it's just not going to happen. I'm sorry.
no, it's not.
You know.
It's just not, because the whole Christian idea, the whole idea of the church is that we're in deep, deep community with each other,
Yep. and
that we've been walking together for accountability, but also to link shields together, and like cover each other. And we've made it so easy to just cancel it. I think cancel culture has come from the church.
Wow. That's a bold statement.
That's what I think. And if you read some history books, some Christian history books, it's like, man, oh, I don't agree with you. Canceled.
Yeah.
Why do you think that, okay, Catholics have split twice. Catholic Church has 2 church splits.
Mm-hmm.
How many church splits has the Protestant movement had?
Uncountable.
That's uncountable. Pennsylvania only exists because of a church split.
Right.
Like, a whole state only exists because of a church split. So, we need to actually become really good at working through offenses with each other. We won't actually get to be excellent that way, because there's things in you that need to be broken off.
Absolutely.
And there's things in me that need to be broken off. And I believe that there's people in your churches, in your community, that are called there with you on purpose to offend those things off of your life.
Absolutely.
And so instead of demonizing those people, you should be like, dang, okay, I need to work this out. I need to work this out with them. I need to let's get together. They're offending me, and I'm probably offending them.
Right.
Like that's like the majority of a pastor's job is to be like, yep, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you're offensive too. Yeah.
Pretty much.
So I mean, how is that any better? You know, like
Right. I was watching a little, you know, how Instagram has those little, and yes, I'm on social media, those little blips, little sermon blips.
Yeah, yeah.
Bill Johnson had one yesterday, and he was actually led his congregation through a repentance of gossip, slander, and
Whoa.
yeah. And I was like, wow. I mean, to know, like, wait a minute here, what this actually does, and the separation and the offense, and how it can grow,
Yeah.
and just tear apart a church. It's crazy.
Yeah, for the most part, Satan doesn't have to do anything.
No.
The church destroys itself.
No.
And it reminds me of Galatians.
Galatians.
Yeah, Galatians. I think Galatians is one of the best books in the whole New Testament. Okay. I mean, you should just read this all in one sitting and just know how savage Paul is. I love it.
Very savage. Very offensive.
Very offensive. But he is basically rebuking Jews in Galatia. And the whole book is about either walking by the Spirit or walking by the law in the flesh, right? Mm-hmm. And so he's trying to reconcile these people together and saying, listen, if it's the law that brought anything to you, then why did Jesus come? He's so adamant about it. He's so upset about it that he literally, he's like, I wish that these people trying to bring you back into the law would mutilate themselves, because they're trying to make all of these new converts to Christianity live by the law, which means, circumcision.
Yeah. Right.
In a literal sense. So that's the kind of veracity
right
that he's bringing to this conversation. And he says, for you, brethren, have been called to liberty. Only do not use liberty as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, beware lest you be consumed by one another. I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. And so that was already happening. I mean, if you read the Bible at all, you already know that that's been happening forever. But
right.
But if you bite and devour one another, beware lest you be consumed by one another. And how sad is that? That the church, I mean, honestly, Satan does not have to do much in North America against the church.
No.
Because we're too busy sitting down and analyzing other churches and saying, "Oh, they're not as good as us," and blah blah blah.
Right.
You're not worshiping like us. Oh, you don't know the word like us. Oh, you're not reaching people like us.
Yes.
And it's like, man, what if we actually helped each other get to where we're supposed to be? We actually need each other in order to become more excellent. No one is perfect. No one sees everything that they're doing. No one actually experiences. Like, I could think that my communication is perfectly fine and super loving. And then I got married.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean, babe? That's just how people talk. No. That's not. Nope. Not how she likes it.
No. It's so true.
And so I think number one thing, get really good at moving through a fence. Second thing is that you need to commit in a covenant way with a group of Christians, and be devoted to that house.
Right. And that also goes for the leaders the other way.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a covenant that it's not just the people of the congregation need to basically be in covenant with the leaders. The leaders need to be in covenant with
Right.
the people.
Yes, absolutely.
It has to be a back and forth.
Yes, there has to be. But honestly, even if there wasn't that for the person coming to the church,
no excuse.
You need to commit to a place.
Right.
And you need to grow there. You need to be offended there. You need to work through offense there. And even if the other person never actually wants to work through the offense with you, you can still work through the offense.
Right.
Like, even if that's not a culture that you find, you need to make that culture within yourself.
Absolutely.
You need to decide that. And so that is like first things, how you get to excellence. And then there's just so many layers to it. I think, what does it mean for you to be excellent? Mm-hmm. You know, like, again, excellence is not perfection. It's the best you can with the resources you have. Mm-hmm. And so...
Yeah, and I would say, if you're comfortable, you're not being excellent.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I think excellence only comes with being uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
If you're not being stretched, if you're not being offended, if you're not being, you should probably question, what's really going on. If I'm comfortable, you've probably put yourself in a position where you're not striving, you don't have vision for your life, you don't have a goal, you're not stepping into what God has you, because it will make you uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Excellence makes you very uncomfortable.
Absolutely. If you look at anybody who's successful, mm-hmm. their life is not really, their value isn't on comfort.
Mm-mm. Like your Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody's ever seen any movies or videos or whatever on Navy SEALs, seriously, I wouldn't want to do that.
No.
No, thank you.
They have
frigid water, sitting there getting waves smashed against you.
But that's how you get to be the best.
Right.
And we've actually made comfort an idol.
Absolutely.
And, it used to be, just, I don't know, maybe even 75 years ago, like a lifetime ago, that life was a lot harder.
Absolutely.
Life was a lot harder till now. Like, instead of life being hard and uncomfortable for the most part, now for the most part it's comfortable, and you have to work to be uncomfortable.
Yes. That's actually, I find myself, this is a personal thing that in my mind, I'm like, I am way too comfortable.
Yes.
I really am. So that's not a good thing. I recognize it, and I think most people actually do recognize it is not a good thing. I
think most people are waking up to that fact. I mean, within the last couple of years, a lot of the crazy stuff has happened. So they're like, oh, man. But for me, even just on a physical level, I'm like, all right, I need to walk to work and just even make it hard.
Right.
Because I don't live that far away.
Right.
So I put heavy stuff in a backpack. And I'm like, okay, I just, nothing's hard in my, nothing really physically demanding, and nothing like that. I mean, my life is pretty emotionally demanding. I'll say that. Mm-hmm. Spiritually demanding sometimes, but physically, we are so comfortable. Mm-hmm. And so I think, need to decide if we want to be excellent, if we want to be in the presence of the Lord. Even if you want to be in the presence of the Lord, mm-hmm. you have to decide that comfort is not your goal.
Right. It's interesting too, because, I think it was James. But James in the Bible, who wrote James, obviously there's discussion of which James it was, whether it was Jesus' brother or the disciple, whatever. But then there's also been people throughout history that when they prayed, they pray on their knees, and their knees became calluses, became harder than, say, the calluses on your feet. Wow. Because they knew that they needed to be uncomfortable and to really seek the presence of God. Yeah. And think about that, the excellence in that. And actually, I think it might be James, now that I'm thinking about it, because he talks about excellence throughout the entire book.
Yeah.
And
Faith without works is dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to make sure that that's not our goal, but our goal is to give the best gift to the Lord.
Exactly.
Regardless of people's opinion, regardless of how much it costs you. Man, we've made it so comfortable that it doesn't cost us anymore.
No.
That like following Jesus is this comfortable act.
Yeah.
And what a shame that is. I mean, Bill would always say in schools, like, hey, you won't be able to sacrifice in heaven. And so we would, he would just be like, press in today. This is a sacrifice. You won't be able to do this anymore in heaven. And it's like, wow, that's excellence too. It's like, I'm going to sacrifice this for the Lord. I'm going to bring this to the Lord. And so those are some keys there. But it's like a whole thing you could talk about forever.
Oh yeah, there's so many different variations of this. I mean, even like, when we go through our struggles, we all have things that we have, going in our lives and in the external part of our lives, whether it be families or finances or whatever. And so we have these struggles, but how do we maintain excellence through that?
Yeah.
And how do we actually take it with you, die to yourself, take it with you, and die on that cross and not allow it to circumvent or keep you from the presence of the God.
Right.
That, obviously being in a charismatic church, we expect all the good feelings, right?
Yeah.
What do you do when you're not experiencing those things? And I think that's a discussion for a different date, but it's still that pressing in, and no matter what the cost.
Yeah.
Because it's going to cost you everything. So
yeah. A missionary came to school one time. She's really famous. I can't remember her name. But she's like, God is a healer because you will need to be healed. He's a comforter because you'll need to be comforted. Like all of these things. Like he's a provider because you'll need provision. And we think because we're so comfortable, we think we'll never actually need those things. Like It's like an automatic thing.
Yeah.
It's like, but you wouldn't actually know God as provider unless you didn't have something that you needed provision for.
Right.
You wouldn't know God healer personally if you didn't need him to heal you. And so, again, that comfortable, that idol of comfort.
Yes.
Burn what is comfortable.
Yeah, and I think that would be, if I had to say, this is just my thought process, but like if we would juxtapose excellent, the opposite of it is comfort.
I think you're right. And I think one of the things I think it was Bill. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but honor is excellence as a verb.
That's a good word.
So if we're walking in excellence, we should be. Honor is the action. Honor is excellence in action, which is true. Like even when you're giving something to the Lord, you want to give him the best because you want to honor him.
Right.
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 And so if we're doing something in excellence, the outcome is honor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And then for me, absence, like we've talked about the church, like what happens in the absence of honor. We lower it on purpose so that it's comfortable for everybody.
Yeah.
But a couple weeks ago, Rachel and I went on a date, which is a miracle in itself. It's pretty hard to do these days.
Praise Jesus, right?
Yeah. And so we went to 1919.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I hadn't been. Neither of us had been. I'd been to Lambeau one time. Scared me because I felt like I was in a cult, right there. We went to the store. You could buy anything with the G on it. I was like, Rachel, this is creepy. This is straight up a cult. Like, this is not normal. Like, I hope you know this isn't normal, right? Like, you know this, right?
It's normal for this area.
It's normal here. This is anywhere else. This is creepy.
Yes.
Anyway, so I didn't drink the Kool-Aid. I will watch football. My family loves to watch football. Rachel's family loves to watch football. I watch football. Okay, football's fine. Green Bay Packers, they're fine. But walking up these stairs, and at this time there had been some discussion within church of like, oh, why are we doing this way, blah blah blah. Like, anyway, people always have stuff, and we're both just like, how come nobody has a problem with this? Like, you do something kind of nice in church, and people get upset, but then you can go down to Lambeau Field and nobody cares.
No.
Nobody cares. And I'm not saying, I actually think Lambeau Field is beautiful. I think it's awesome.
It's gorgeous, yeah.
I really enjoyed the experience. Like, everything's super nice, super clean. The restaurant was excellent, actually. The environment was excellent.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is beautiful. This is a beautiful place to be. The food was awesome. And I would go again, hands down. Because it's excellent and it's beautiful and it was made well. And I was like, wow, what if this was a church?
Well, it's actually interesting because I think I mentioned this to you on Sunday. I think you were standing there. But the G doesn't actually stand for Green Bay. Vince Lombardi put the G on the helmet for greatness.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of people think, oh, that means Green Bay. No, it actually means we do everything great.
Wow.
Greatness. So it's an excellence statement.
That's cool.
And it's interesting that as a church, we've forgotten that.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird. It's really
Well,
weird.
because we vilified greatness in a way, because we think only God can be great.
Right.
And I'm like, well, okay, but God made us great. God makes us great.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're actually living the way that we should be living, greatness is a part of who we are because it's a part of who He is.
Right.
We can't separate ourselves as much as we want. We have tried to separate ourselves from God for thousands of years.
Right.
And He's come to make covenant again and again and again and again and again. And regardless of what, it's like, oh, Moses, you do what you do. That the book of the law of Moses was, oh, you want it that way?
Mm-hmm.
You try it. You think you could do it without me? Try it.
Try it. Exactly.
But God has wanted us to be His partner forever.
Right. That's so true.
Before time existed, He wanted us to be His partner. And so when we don't agree to be His partner and agree to enter into greatness, because He made us great and He wants us to be great. God wants us to be great.
Well, like that psalm, my excellent people.
Yes, my excellent people. Yes. He wants us to be excellent. He wants us to be great. He wants us to have crowns that we throw at His feet.
Mm-hmm. Yes, let's collect crowns.
Yes.
Let's collect them.
Yes. So that we can give Him the honor and the glory.
Exactly.
So actually, that's a huge thing. You have to decide that you are going to be great for the Lord if you want to go after excellence, because greatness is going to come to you when you're excellent.
Right.
A king is going to come to you and want to give you power in his kingdom. And if you decide, oh, I can't be great, you've just given that kingdom over to the devil.
Right.
And so, oh man, we're called to greatness. We're called to excellence. We're called to actually. So when we diminish what type of influence we can have, what level of greatness, what level of excellence we have, we abdicate the church's power and authority to the world. And I think that the last 4 years is evidence of this.
Right. I totally agree.
You
with that.
cannot tell me that this is normal.
No.
But what happens when the church rejects excellence and rejects greatness and rejects the call of the Lord to come up to his level, to enter into these places that are unholy. The whole book of Daniel, this dude is serving an evil king.
Yep.
And he's serving for the Lord, and he's influencing for the Lord. Listen, politics is only horrible because we're not involved in it. Hollywood is only horrible because we're not involved in it.
Exactly.
Businesses are only the corporate corporate media is only evil, only bad because we're not a part of it. Music is only bad because we're not a part of it. The business corporations are only bad because we're not a part of it. And the founders knew this would happen. Mm-hmm. They said this experiment will fail if the people do not love Jesus. Right. That's a paraphrase, but I'm pretty sure that was John Adams.
Yes, I think so. I think you're 100% correct on that.
So the state of the world, all creation groans for the sons of God.
Right.
That's in Romans. If there was a perfect time period to look at, all creation is groaning right now for us to take up the mantle of the Son of God and be great and be excellent.
That's so true. I think the Constitution of the United States is probably one of the most biblical things that have ever been written.
Yeah.
If we stepped away from it, not that I want to get into politics or anything like
right.
that, but when we look at, like you said, we've separated that.
Yeah.
And we've said, okay, we can do this without you, God.
Yeah.
And it systematically over the course of almost 300 years now, we have stepped away.
Yeah.
From God's calling on this nation, God's calling of his people, and we've forgotten. We've forgotten.
Totally. And primarily because the church has become comfortable. Mm-hmm. Listen, it's going to be uncomfortable for you to do great things.
Yeah, and, persecution, Todd White always says that persecution's coming. Are we ready to stand up? You know? And I agree. I mean,
100%.
We persecute ourselves.
Yes. It's not even bad yet. I think I said this in a meeting with the leadership. Like, we thought we were, Psalm 23, we thought we were in the presence of our enemies.
No.
We haven't even gotten to the valley yet.
No.
Like, we think, these fellow Christians are the persecution. No. Yeah. They're persecuting, but they're not like threatening your life.
No.
Like, I'm sorry, we have become so soft that, actual missionaries have guns pointed in their face and they're like, do it.
David Hogan talks about how he carries a gun.
Yeah.
He's a missionary that carries a gun.
Yeah.
How does that compute? How does it offend you?
Right.
Let's just be honest. What? You shouldn't kill him. He's carrying a gun.
Yeah.
To protect himself and his loved ones.
Yeah.
In the missionary field.
Yeah.
That's offensive.
Yeah. Well, not for me, but
not for you. Not for me either.
Not for me. I think it offends a lot of people who have the hippie Jesus idea.
Right.
Of what Christianity should look like, and a pacified view of evil.
Right. They kind of almost intertwine Mahatma Gandhi.
Yeah. Yeah.
This whole passive resistance.
Yeah.
And we've vilified it and celebrated it as Christianity, and it's like, no, Christianity is very aggressive.
Yes.
Very assertive.
Yeah.
Very offensive. And
we've essentially emasculated Christianity.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because you can't be in politics because it's evil. Okay, so why did God come to? Why did Jesus come? He came to an evil world. Mm-hmm. What? I can't be involved in this because it's okay. I get that I shouldn't partner with that.
Right.
But who's gonna change it?
Right.
Only excellence, the spirit of excellence, only greatness can do that. Because nobody wants to follow a poor person. Nobody wants to follow someone who does third or fourth best. Nobody wants to give them influence.
No.
Sorry, that's just reality.
Right.
I mean, that's actually not even the way of the world.
No.
That's the Bible says that.
Right.
Read Proverbs. It's all in there. And so, like, but we've emasculated it so much, and we've become so comfortable. Like Heidi Baker, she's like, somebody had a gun pointed in my face, and they actually pulled the trigger. Didn't go off.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. That's pretty awesome.
We would have been peeing our pants and been like, I'm going to go home now. I was like, the mission field is too
Right.
much. And like, oh, the persecution so much. It's like, yeah. Have you read the Bible?
Pretty much.
You know Paul? Yeah, he killed I don't know. That's a good question. It's a good question, Lord. How many Christians did Paul actually kill? I think he did a good job. I think he probably killed a lot of them.
Right. Probably.
Because, I mean, he lived a life of excellence. So.
Well, he called himself the Pharisee of all Pharisees.
Yeah. So.
And that's right there as an example of, if he's the Pharisee of all Pharisees, that means he knew what excellence was.
Yep.
According to the world standards.
According to Jewish standards. Yeah.
Right. Or the Jewish standards.
Yeah.
Yes. So he already knew what excellence was, but then he stepped and he encountered the Lord.
Yes.
And his excellence that the Lord kind of bestowed upon him, he writes 13 books of the Bible.
Yep.
13, right? I think I got that.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So we need to actually embrace greatness again. And you can embrace greatness and still be humble.
Right.
You can still be humble, and you can still pursue excellence, and you can stay humble. Daniel is a great example of that.
Yes.
Joseph is a great example of that. And the world needs it. And we need to die to this thing of like comparing. Because I'm like, you know what? If Lambeau Field was a church, most people would judge it. Most Christians would judge it.
Oh, for sure.
It's too nice. It's too big.
No private jets.
Yeah, it's too big. It's too nice. Why do you need that many seats? Why do you need, it's like, because there's that many people coming.
Right.
Well, that's just too much money for a building. Well, how do you know how much money they have? It's like, how much money is too much money?
Right.
How do you know? Israel was one of the most richest countries on earth.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's why people came to Solomon. It's like their riches blew their minds.
Right. It's actually interesting. I was just thinking about Solomon too, because I was thinking about why wouldn't the Lord permit David to build the temple? Because Solomon's called to do it excellent, and everything he did, think about that. Everything he did when he built the temple was excellent.
Yeah.
It was the most beautiful ever.
Yep.
So that tells me like everybody has a call to excellence in some area of their life.
Right.
What is your call? What is God calling you to be excellent in?
Yeah.
First and foremost, in his presence.
Yeah.
That's first and foremost.
Yes.
Second, be uncomfortable.
Yes.
If you have to do things to make yourself uncomfortable, get rid of things, do those things.
Yeah.
And then I think last but not least, you have to understand that it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about Jesus.
Yes. Exactly. Because I care that I achieve greatness and excellence only to give it to Jesus.
Right.
I really don't really. This is gonna sound weird. I love people. I really do. I love being a pastor. I love all that stuff. I need people in my life. All of that. Right. So this is not a statement of like I hate people, but I've never been a person who like needs to be around people like as my number one goal.
Right.
Like a lot of times I'll hang out with people and then afterwards I'll be like, oh, wow, I really needed to be with people. But like before that, I'd been like,
right.
fine.
Yeah.
So like it's the same thing with greatness. Like there's something innately in me that I'm like, I want to achieve greatness. I want to be excellent. But I really believe that comes from the Lord, because in actuality, I don't really want to be seen. Well,
Right.
like not a
Yes.
big priority for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, now, this is not a theological statement. I don't need arguments. This is just something that I had a dream once, and it was about Moses when the Lord took him and put him in the cleft of the rock, so that way the glory of the Lord could pass by him.
Yeah.
And I saw the Lord walking, right, past Moses, and then the robe that was following him that Moses got to see, it zoomed in from a distance. First, it was Moses, and it was just shining brightly. And then all of a sudden, it just went hyper focus, and it zoomed in, and it was billions of people that were following the Lord that Moses got to see.
Whoa.
And that we have this ability, give this glory that he basically has put on us to give back to him. We're going to be carrying that in front of Moses. It was a beautiful, now again, not a theology statement, just a picture of what excellence really looks like. It was beautiful. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yes.
I mean, there's all kinds of crazy things.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like the one where Jesus goes up to the mountain with, and Elijah and Moses.
Get transfiguration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he gets taken up by a chariot, right?
Right.
And then Moses on the mount.
Right.
So people are like, did that all happen like at the same time?
I believe it.
I think, I mean,
That's a discussion for a different
that's
day.
a good theory.
Yeah, because we have to, we, like you said earlier, we put everything so linear.
Yeah.
And we forget God's outside of time. Time exists inside of God, not the other way around.
Yep.
And so he sees the beginning and the end all at the same time. So it's very plausible.
Yeah.
Yes. So.
Well, to wrap this up, I think we're,
Yep.
Yep. Number one, in our pursuit of excellence, and what excellence looks like. Number one, get really good at working through your offense. Number two, get planted and stay planted at a church. Doesn't have to be the perfect place, because there is no perfect place. Get planted there, stay there, grow there. Get offended there. Number three, get uncomfortable. Make it a goal to be uncomfortable. Make it a goal to grow. All growth is uncomfortable every time. So take comfort off of the pedestal. We've all made it an idol. We're all guilty of it.
Absolutely.
Raise everybody's hands. We're all guilty of it. We need to get uncomfortable. And here's the thing. Either we can choose to get uncomfortable, or we will be made uncomfortable. And it is always better that you choose to be uncomfortable because it's going to be uncomfortable. Like you said, persecution is going to come. So either we can train ourselves, we can get, we could get hard, we can actually grow to have capacity for it, or we could stay comfortable as long as possible, and then we won't have the ability to endure. And lastly, accept that you are made for greatness. Accept that you need to be great for the Lord. You need to walk in excellence and honor and grace and humility in order that you have greatness to give to the Lord, in order that you have the influence that you need, in order that the world, that kings will say, I want to give you my kingdom. And the world will be a much better place.
Absolutely.
If we actually do that. It's a much better plan to have Christians who love the Lord, who are obsessed with the presence of the Lord, obsessed with giving him glory in places of influence. And that's what we're called to do. We're called to be in places of influence. And so.
And you will experience Just like he said in Galatians, you will experience liberty, you will experience
Yeah.
freedom when you accept who God has called you to be.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
So, Lord, teach us about excellence. Teach us to pursue you and get to those places that are uncomfortable so that you can comfort us. And God, I pray that you would reveal the calls and destinies on our lives and how we should pursue those, and start to just instill in us such humility that when greatness comes, we do not get prideful and arrogant, but we stay that humble servant of the Lord. We stay servant kings. We stay like Jesus, that he came to serve, not to be served. And I pray that we start to see those things, and we enter into places, and we enter into places of influence for the sake of the world, honestly.
Yes.
And for the sake of giving you glory and what you deserve. Amen.
Amen.
Until next time, everybody, like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. And if you would like to donate, there is a link to donate to New Life Ministries. Again, no pressure, but wanted to give the opportunity to honor what is excellent. Hey!
There you go.
All right. See you guys.